did an RFP and we're submitting a proposal and all of these letters of commitment. And then as the process moves forward, they really look at how much money can be raised as a good faith effort to get to the total amount. So that's part of the process. But again, it starts with all of these letters of commitment saying that we're serious about, like you said, a groundbreaking opportunity for our students.
Other comments? Is there a motion to approve the Say Yes to Education letter of commitment? Ms. Horn motions. Is there a second? Mr. Brady? All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you so much. There are no information items on the agenda tonight. We're going to move to the consent calendar, and currently there is one speaker about policies, which is a part of the consent calendar. So at this time, I would invite Judith Faulkner to come for your presentation. Judith Faulkner. Ms. Faulkner, thank you for being here tonight. Before you start, I'm supposed to say that each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to address the board. At the end of 2.5 minutes, a bell will sound once. You will then have 30 seconds to finish your statement. At the end of 3 minutes, the bell will sound twice, indicating that your time is up. The superintendent will look into the speaker's issues and, if necessary, represent the board in following up on recommended action to the board. Thank you again for being here tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, members of Jefferson County School Board. I'm here tonight as a member of the executive committee with the Fairness Campaign to simply say that we were disappointed that the hair policy, rife with institutional racism, existed in the first place. We hope that everyone involved will give much more thought to discriminatory policies on discipline, the use of restraint, and suspension. We hope that any policy will be fair for everyone, regardless of race, religion, gender, gender identity, sexual orientation, and disability status. We must be inclusive of all children. We must encourage them to be the best that they can be. And we absolutely must remember that diversity is our greatest strength. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to clarify that tonight the board is looking at several policies, none of which deals with the topic that you spoke on, but we are very aware and we are moving forward collectively as a district to be compassionate and sincere with what we're doing with our students. But thank you for addressing us, but I don't want you to think that we're voting on any policies like that tonight. But thank you for being here very much. Okay, so moving on to the consent calendar, are there any items that need to be pulled down? Is there a motion to receive the consent calendar? Ms. Duncan, motion seconded by Dr. Wilner. All those in favor? The consent calendar passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And now at this point we have tie bids, and I'm going to turn it over to Board Member Hathaway to help us with the tie bids tonight.
Item number 79 on bid ID 7272 for plumbing supplies and equipment. Plumb Master Incorporated. Item number 143 on bid ID 7272 for plumbing supplies equipment, another line item. Master Supply.
Is there a motion to accept the tie bids? Mr. Brady, seconded by Ms. Horn. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on to the board planning calendar, discussion on the board planning calendar. Ms. Duncan.
There are a couple of things that aren't on the calendar and that aren't listed there. And I think we've talked about the monthly dashboard report, whatever we choose to include in that, and the quarterly report on behavior. And I think it'd be nice to go ahead and have that on the calendar so we don't forget that's something that we would like to see over the next this next year especially. And also just like to see an update on our Schools of Innovation somewhere on this calendar this fall to see how things are moving with our Schools of Innovation.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Duncan. Anything else for the planning calendar? Is there a motion to receive the planning calendar? Ms. Duncan, seconded by Mr. Hathaway. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to board reports. Dr. Wilner.
I've submitted my report in writing, so it's on the meeting materials, but I just want to say that Dr. Hargens and I had an opportunity to attend the first JCPS LGBTQ Student Summit on Saturday, and there were a number of community partners, University of Louisville and the Louisville Youth Group. It was a wonderful event. They had over 100 students and parents and other family members and staff registered for the event. Great turnout by the community, and the first event of its kind in JCPS. One of the things we learned was how far ahead we are of cities, including some of the larger metropolitan districts, in partnering with an organization like the Louisville Youth Group. So it was good to hear that we're out in front of the pack on that. It was a very affirming event, and there's a picture with my board report of some of us who got to give a brief greeting. So.
Other? Ms. Horn?
I've had the opportunity to serve on it's the steering committee for the City of Louisville Arts Master Plan. Suzanne Wright and I are serving on that committee, and it's been really interesting. Education was chosen among all the topics as one of the 3 topics to focus on. So there's a work group that's been set up, and meetings are starting to occur related to that. They got a lot of feedback from the community, and they actually broadened the feedback to get more feedback from other areas of the county that were not, we didn't hear from. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens, with the focus on education and the arts. So it's kind of exciting, and I'll just keep you appraised of when the reports start coming out.
Other reports? I had the opportunity to be there Saturday also and sat in on the student discussion group in the afternoon, and also heard a wonderful presentation from Dr. Shauna Stinton. So I'd like to give her a shout out to say what a good job she did on presenting about SBDM and avenues for bringing things before the school administration. It was wonderful to be in the circle with the students to listen. They had good information, and I thank JCPS for having the first year of that, and I look forward to next year's conference as well. So it was a great honor to be there. If there are no other board reports, we will move on to persons requesting to address the board on non-agenda items. And currently there are 6 speakers on non-agenda items. Before we start with the speakers, I'll read through the context again. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to address the board. At the end of 2.5 minutes, a bell will sound once. You will then have 30 seconds to finish your statement. At the end of 3 minutes, the bell will sound twice, indicating that your time is up. The superintendent will look into speakers' issues and if necessary, present the board and following up or recommend action to the board. So starting with our speakers on non-agenda items, Ms. Lenora Moore. Ms. Lenora Moore. Ms. Lenora Moore. Our second speaker is Mr. Philip Setters. Mr. Philip Setters, thank you for being here this evening, Mr. Setters.
Thank you. Good evening. I think by now everyone pretty well knows that my name is Philip Setters and I am a concerned parent. The student fee situation in this district is a fiasco. Many of the fees being charged simply ignore KDE regulations, and some are even presented in a deceitful manner. Those approved by you are at best inequitable in a variety of ways, and they mask a budgetary deficiency. In May, when you approved fees for the second time in the inadequate 3 minutes I was allotted, I identified a number of issues, and I asked you to delay approving those fees until you had done the work to straighten the matter out. I warned you. If you go ahead and approve these fees, you are opening a Pandora's box of problems because you will be inviting or even condoning significant violations of state regulations and perhaps even educational laws, possibly putting people's careers in jeopardy. I am pleading with you, please don't do this. Well, some of you insisted on going ahead and doing it anyway, and there's already a problem at one school at least. Even though I think the people involved took reasonable steps to comply with the rules, but even the district supports failed to ensure compliance. That night, Mr. Brady voted to approve all the fees even though he acknowledged there were problems with them. He wanted to permit another year to get it right. But here's the rub. The rules were published in March 2013 and became effective that July. That was 3 years ago. Do you really need a fourth year to ensure that a simple rule is being followed, that students are being treated fairly, and parents are not being sold a bill of goods? 3 years seems long enough to stop kicking the can. 4 years just seems like not taking your responsibility seriously. Hopefully it won't take 4 years for the people of District 7 to fix their mistake. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Setters, for being here tonight. Our next speaker is Rebecca Frederick. Ms. Rebecca Frederick. That's okay. Thank you, Ms. Frederick, for being here tonight.
Hi. So my name is Rebecca Frederick. I am a parent of an incoming kindergartner, as well as a leader with a local group called Louisville Showing Up for Racial Justice. I'm here today to address the Butler Hair Code policy and to say that, this is a problem that begins with hair, but it doesn't end there. And it just begins in this one school, and it goes to every school and to every school in this district, and it affects all of our students in a negative way. When we are cultivating an environment where those that are most marginalized are continuously marginalized by our systems that are structured and or our systems that are supposed to be structured to support them and to lift them up in an equitable way, we're creating, we're sending these kids out into the world in a way that they're not ready. We're creating an environment that is putting one child above another because of the color of their skin. That this is something that the hair policy, here it is, black and white, right? The hair policy is really clearly discriminatory towards students of color. But it goes much deeper. It goes into the achievement gap that is very, very clearly documented, that poor and working class students, that students of color are not given the resources that they need to be equitably lifted up. This goes into the discipline policies that are causing there to be an unimaginable amount of restraints that are hurting our students, that are hurting our disabled students, that are hurting our students of color in a disproportionate way. that we are suspending students of color at a disproportionate rate, and that all of this begins in this hair policy. All of this begins in this racial bias that we are writing into what we are giving every single student. And we at Louisville Showing Up for Racial Justice are white people that focus on what we are doing in these spaces to help lift up students of color in a way that just help lift up students of color. So I'm going to ask the white members of this board, Dr. Hargens, that you all step up, break your white silence, and say this is not okay. That throughout the JCPS policies, throughout the actions, throughout the practices, that we are discriminating against students of color, either outright or in just this coded language and in these coded actions, and it's not okay. And we need to be cultivating an environment as parents, as students, as educators, as caregivers, where every student is able to learn in dignity, with equitable resources, with redistribution of what we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Frederick, for being here tonight. Our next speaker is Gay Edelman. Gay Edelman is our next speaker. Thank you, Ms. Edelman, for being here tonight.
Good evening, dear JCPS. My subject tonight is Fool Me Thrice. I don't know how many times I've been fooled. Actually, I know it's been at least more than 3, but you know how the joke goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. What happens when you're fooled 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 100 times? At what point do you take things to the next level? I'm going to give you 3 examples of times that I've been fooled. The first one pertains to my son's school. Ever since I set foot in that school, I recognize the gold mine that it is. And I've been trying, my background is marketing, so I've been trying for the last 3 years to help recruit students to that school, because we're a priority school, we're a failing school. One way to change our scores is to recruit students to the magnet and help grow the scores. And every single year, I've had obstacle after obstacle after obstacle thrown at my feet. I sent an email to all of you last week with some of my concerns, and Dr. Hargens, I appreciate your response. Linda, I appreciate your response. Dr. Hargens wrote, everyone agrees that Shawnee is a shining star and that it provides a great opportunity for JCPS students. There's a disconnect. Not everyone does recognize that. That's my point. That's what we're trying to do, is change perception. And so if we think that that everyone already recognizes that, then we're not even admitting what the problem is. My second concern is Challenger Learning Center. A year ago, when you voted to allow Kentucky Science Center to operate it, you promised us that the new operator, their proposal said they would fly 150 missions. We flew 150 missions last year, so no interruption in service was the promise. They flew 42, I think it was. So we went to 1/3 of what we had been doing before. And yet we're paying them. We just renewed the budget for $90,000 to pay them, when the reason we cut it was because it was costing us $250,000 without any return. But 8,000 students went through the program. That's a return. Where's the value put on that? There's been no value put on that, and here we are renewing the contract for even more this year, and it sits dark most days. What do we need to do to send all of JCPS's 6th and 7th graders through this investment that we've already made? We spent the $1 million to install it at Shawnee, and it sits dark. Let's put kids back into that program. And the third issue is the hair policy, and you've already heard speakers, and I know it's been talked to death. But I was disappointed that the letter indicated that the person who brought it to the attention should have asked first. Instead of admitting that we made a mistake, We made a mistake. There should be a review process that says you cannot violate law and you cannot violate board policy, and it should be reviewed. It got changed by a couple of people who probably meant no harm, just weren't familiar with the terms, and it became a big stink because there wasn't a policy in place. So my question to you is, what do we do when it's fool me once, fool me twice, fool me thrice? What are those next steps? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Edelman. And our next speaker is Buffy Sexton. Buffy Sexton. Buffy Sexton. Thank you, Mr. Sexton, for being here tonight.
Good evening. Miss Buffy Sexton is unable to be here. My name is Benjamin Geese, and I am requesting her turn to speak, if that is permissible.
It's not permissible according to General Counsel.
Okay, thank you for your time.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Our next speaker is Dr. Kayla Story. Kayla Story, Dr. Story, thank you for being here. Kyla, I'm sorry, I apologize.
All right. Hi, good evening. My name is Dr. Kyla Story. I'm an associate professor at University of Louisville in Women and Gender Studies and Pan-African Studies. I'm also the Audrey Lorde Endowed Chair in Race, Gender, Class, and Sexuality Studies at the University of Louisville, and I'm here to speak about the dress code is the plan to implement in a number of schools in JCPS rather. Not only do I see the policy along with the hair policy as gender bias, I also see it as racist. To single out and/or police and/or punish students of African descent and other students of color who wish to express their politics, ancestry, and personal style of their hair in its natural state, to punish those students, single them out, and/or ridicule them is deplorable to me. My hair has been locked for the past 11 years, all the while I was in grad school. My decision to lock my hair, and that's the proper term. Dreadlocks is a European colonizer term. When they come to Jamaica and they say that they're dreadful locks, so it's a really pejorative term, and it's extremely problematic to call someone's hair that, right? So my hair is locked, it is not dreadlocked, right? So that's an FYI. I also, in terms of the femphobia that I see, is regulating male students to have their hair limit or short for a number of reasons tends to be, to me, gender policing and also femphobic, which is problematic. As a young person, I went through public school. I grew up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I went to public school K through 12. I graduated with my doctorate from Temple University in Philadelphia when I was 27 years old. And at no point in time did my natural hair distract from my professional, personal, and/or educational goals. Me wearing my hair and expressing myself through my clothes, my aesthetic, right, did not hinder my professional, career, or educational goals. And being a professor and teaching at the college level for the past 11 years at Drexel University in Philly, at Temple University in Philly, and now for the past 8 at the University of Louisville, I've never, as an instructor or an educator, been distracted by any of my students here, and I've probably taught hundreds and hundreds of students over the years at various institutions. To me, I feel as if teachers and administrators are getting distracted by the way students are dressing or their hair, I encourage them to look up different pedagogical methods to create critical engagement with their students and with their young people. Doing one's hair and wearing one's outfits in certain ways is a form of self-expression, and it's a certain amount of freedom, and I feel like hindering that and suppressing that in a young person is very detrimental to the educational process. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes our list of speakers for this evening, and I thank everyone for their patience and for helping us move the agenda very quickly. Before, there is no executive session, but before I call for adjournment, because tomorrow is the first day of school, and because once upon a time I was a teacher, each of the board members this evening has received an envelope. So I would, at this time, like you to open your envelope. And in the envelope, you have a piece of paper. And on that piece of paper is a a letter. You either have an S, a T, a P, or a C. So what I would like each board member to do at this time is to speak to a positive statement about day one or JCPS as we start our school year tomorrow. So if you have something that says an S, you're saying something to a student. If you have something that has a T/S, you're talking to teacher or staff. And if you have something that has a P, you're talking to a parent. And if you have something that has a C, you're talking to our community. Because a lot of time, we spend a lot of time talking about what we're not doing well. And we have a lot of people in our district that show up every day for our students. And I hope that we never lose our focus, because it's easy to be distracted on the many things that come along in life. And I just tried to think of something today at the last minute that we could do to focus on education and what's important to us. And I looked at I'm giving you all time to think about this, so I'm buying time, so but I'm getting ready to run out of it. So I tried to find some quotes about education. Nelson Mandela said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." Abraham Lincoln, "The best way to predict the future is to create it." Dr. Martin Luther King, "Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education." Marva Collins, "If you can't make a mistake, you can make anything." Dr. Zeus, an authority, "You are off to great places. Today is your day. Your mountain is waiting, so get on your way." And I will say, usually I'm the last to speak, but I would like to say, in the spirit of Muhammad Ali, I would ask that we not count the days, but that we make each day count. So at that point, I will turn it over to my colleagues to share, tell us who you're speaking to, and whoever would like to go first. Mr. Hadaway.
Do I have 2 letters? This is 2 letters.
The 2 letters stands for
Well, I was
teacher
going to
and
speak to
staff.
both of them.
Huh, you can speak to both of them.
Okay, teacher and staff. Okay, I thought it was teacher and students. Okay. Teacher, thank you for being here. Thank you for being in the classroom. I look forward to a wonderful year. I want you to know that your profession is the most noble profession that I have seen. You have value in my eyes, and I walk your halls, and I hear your children with excitement learning. I hear your compassion in your voice, and I hear your dedication, long hours that you work to make sure that your children are lifted up in your classroom. I am very, very thankful for you, teacher. Staff, I thank you for working behind the scenes most of the time. I thank you for being there to do whatever it takes to make sure that students have a great learning environment, whether you're cleaning a floor, whether you're putting out food on trays, whatever it is, you are valuable. If you're driving a bus, thank you so much for what you do. You are impacting lives, TNS, that will pay off in the long term. Thank you for what you do, and have a great year.
Thank you, Mr. Hadaway. Who would like to go next? Oh, and you do have an opportunity to pass if you want to. I don't want anybody to feel any pressure, so if you don't want to participate, you may pass. Ms. Horn?
I have C. And so C, I'm going to change it up a little bit and first direct the community. Very simply, I hope that the community will be public school advocates, that all of you in the community will support JCPS and support public school. C also for me is to the children, and very simply, make it a great day.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Brady.
We'll just go on down the line here, shall we? I have S for students, and when I see that and I start thinking about what to say to students, I immediately run to my 2 young boys that will be starting school yet another year tomorrow. And when I think about that, I just think about what I would say to them, and this would apply to any student. But first of all, do your best. Be in class, pay attention, show respect to your teachers, show respect to your fellow classmates. Do your best, but don't be afraid to make mistakes. Do what you have to do, make the mistakes, but what you have to learn is, what you have to do is learn from those mistakes. And I will promise to students out there and to my own sons that I will do my best, and I will make mistakes. And I have made mistakes, but I try to learn from them. So it's important what is important is that what you learn from those mistakes and what you do afterwards. Do you get back up? Do you dig in and not admit a mistake? Do you try and change course? I would encourage all of our students to take those chances. Don't be risk adverse. Learn from those mistakes and continue on, because that's what's going to build perseverance and grit, and that is what's going to get you through your life well beyond JCPS.
Thank you. Next. Dr. Wilner?
I also have C for community, and Jefferson County Public Schools is fortunate to have an enormous amount of community support. There's broad support for our public schools compared to other large urban districts. And I want to encourage this community to rally behind our students. The word community to me also, it's an inclusive word, that we join in community with one another, and that means all of us. It means our most marginalized students, our most marginalized families, every student is important. Every member of this community is important, and the children that are in our school system, they're our children. It takes a village, and we are that village, and just want to invite everyone to rally behind the important work that takes place in our schools every day for every one of our students.
Ms. Duncan?
I have S. So does that mean students or staff? For whichever one it means.
It means students.
Okay, well, for both, whatever. My advice is to smile and enjoy the challenge.
Thank you. Dr. Harkins?
I have teacher staff. So for every teacher and staff member, remember that you are the most powerful person in the district, and that you could be and create the moment that a student will remember for the rest of their lives.
Thank you. I have a note from Ms. Horn, Mr. Brady, that you were trying to get my attention.
Yes, Madam Vice Chair. You had mentioned that there's no need for executive session. However, I'd like to make a motion that this board goes into executive session. The purpose is to discuss negotiation strategies. That would include any and all matters incidental to and supplementary to the foregoing. May also be taken up, considered, and acted upon in the meeting. Portions of the meeting will be, the meeting will be closed to the public pursuant to KRS 61.810, parentheses 1, parentheses E of the Open Meetings Act.
I have to defer to General Counsel because I had no knowledge that you were going to do this this evening. We've done this one other time during a meeting, but because you're doing that, you have the right to do that, but I still need to defer to General Counsel.
Brady, there was a discussion about this before the meeting as to whether it's appropriate, given that negotiations at the bargaining table have ended with an impasse, and the process now goes to mediation, fact-finding, and arbitration, as to whether there is anything that the board could properly discuss at this point.
My understanding is that the board member can make a motion, and it would be up to the board whether to second that motion or to decide to go into executive session.
And you're correct in that respect, that you can make a motion, and then the board vice chair can call it for a vote.
Is there a second to the motion? Ms. Horn, all those in favor of going into the executive session, would you state the reason we're going into an executive session?
To discuss negotiation strategies, which is pursuant to KRS 61.810, parentheses 1, parentheses E of the Open Meetings Act.
And if I understand you correctly, Mr. Mellon, that because we are not in negotiations, we're currently gone to mediation, and at this point that discussions are not being held, that it's still at the level of mediation. Is that correct, before we go back to the arbitrator? Am I correct?
That's correct. It's going to mediation first, then fact finding, and then arbitration. If the motion passes, we can go into executive session, but we can discuss at that point what we can properly discuss and not discuss.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of going into executive session, would you please indicate by raising your hand? Those opposed? At this time, we will go into executive session. I would like to give everyone here the opportunity to leave because tomorrow is the first day of school. And thank you for being here tonight. I wish for everyone a successful first day of school.
You're welcome. But I'm sure.
The only thing is, Frank said we can't talk about negotiations because we're not in negotiations now. So